Good morning. This is video number 25 on environmental testing by HPLC. Here we will cover some regulations, many United States EPA methods on various substances such as pesticides, PAHs, nitrosamine, PFAS, and also carbonyl. This particular topic is particularly dear to my heart because I started my career many years ago as an environmental chemist in analytical chemistry. This table summarizes an overview of perspective on regulation and sample types on environmental application by HPLC. Number one, environmental testing is performed by environmental testing laboratories, could be by water authorities, utility companies, such as water utility company, government and state health laboratory, such as USDA and agrochemical and pesticide manufacturers. There's a big chunk of work done by the United States Environmental Protection Agency, or US EPA, which is the regulatory agency responsible for protecting public health in response to regulation such as the Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, Toxic Substance Control Act, or TSCA, Resources Conservation and Recovery Act, or RCRA, for remedial sites and waste disposal sites. There are literally hundreds of official test methods from the US EPA in various environmental monitoring programs, particularly active about in the 1980s and 90s. And many of these methods happen to use HPLC. Now, I'd like to point out that obviously there's a lot of change in technology. Today, a lot of these methods are really covered by HPLC in conjunction with mass spec or mass spec. There are 5 categories of samples listed here for these environmental testing. First one is drinking water. Then wastewater, toxic substance and pesticides, solid waste, and also air samples. This table lists key environmental applications and summarize the advantages of HPLC, and with the note that LC mass spec is the emergent technique as the dominant technique for residual analysis. We mentioned about sample types and analytes. I'd like to point out that other preferred techniques other than HPLC are volatile organics by gas chromatography, and also heavy metal by ICP, or more recently by ICP mass spec. So once again, some key applications: pesticides, industrial pollutants such as dyes, surfactants, amine PAHs, and others. The advantage of HPLC are many. First of all, amenable to thermal labile non-volatile polar compound, a huge advantage over gas chromatography. Rapid and automated analysis of very complex samples. Precise quantitation with sensitive and selective detectors such as UV fluorescence and mass spectrometry. One big advantage for drinking water is the fact that HPLC can tolerate injection of very large volume via direct injection of aqueous sample in reverse phase. Anywhere from 0.5 to 2 mil are very common, or even larger amount. And obviously, you can also do pre-concentration by SPE or solid phase extraction using a cartridge or using a filter disc. Now here are some selected EPA method using HPLC and LC mass spec. Others we mentioned may require other techniques such as GC, IC, and other technique. IC stands for ion chromatography. Now, some of these are a little bit on the older side. I'd like to point out one paper uh, that PerkinElmer authors have published, a very extensive documentation and white paper on regulation and also all the HPLC method in EPA that was published in Journal Chromatography in 1993. And the authors are from the environmental department of PerkinElmer at that time. So those are some of the very prominent methods which are very active several decades ago, right? Mainly carbamate, 531.2, some organic contaminants, PAHs. For drinking water, the method number are designated as the 500 number. For wastewater, it's a 600 number. So there are always a numbering scheme which reflect the sample types. Pharmaceutical carbonyl compounds, explosive formaldehyde, which are in the toxic organic categories. So those are the table. I'd like to update it somewhat, this table, because it's published quite a while before, with particular emphasis on some of the very important recent development, such as PFAS. PFAS stands for perfluoroalkyl substance, which is particularly important in recent year because of discovery of some carcinogenic property, and also the fact that these are forever chemicals. So a lot of concerns in recent uproar on the level of PFAS found in human blood serums, and also is it really is quite pervasive and ubiquitous. Other one that seemed to be hot at several times is endocrine disruptors such as bisphenol A, and also right after in the 1780 nitrosamine, which is another potent class of a carcinogen, which has been in the news constantly. And recently there are several recalls of concern level of nitrosamine in drug products, which deserve a lot of attention, a lot of analytical activities. So this table lists pesticide analysis, just an overview. I'd like to mention the pesticide methods also are developed by manufacturers, particularly those who want to develop new pesticides for agrochemical purposes. So in support of regulation, a lot of the methods are company proprietary, and these are mostly, once again, HPLC method with UV or mass spec detection. So methods are used to generate assay data for potency, stability data, residual analysis, and metabolism data. Now, in the United States, regulation require any pesticide manufacturer to registration for new pesticide or agrochemical notify the EPA using a regulatory filing called the PMN, stand for pre-manufacturing notice. Very similar to the NDA in the pharmaceutical industry, perhaps a little bit less stringent specification. So here it describes the structure of the new pesticide or herbicide, the impurity profile, byproducts, its environmental impact or environmental fate, and tox data for birds, fishes, and other animal impact. So, and the pesticide determination are once again performed on drinking water, wastewater, on pesticides. There's also pesticide done as a residual analysis of foodstuff, and these are performed typically using these type of method, which are published in ASTM, AOAC, and National Pesticide Survey methods. Mentioned that a lot of these residual methods are using LC coupled with a triple quad because the sample preparation uh, can be almost eliminated or mitigated, become much simpler versus something less specific such as UV or fluorescence method. We mentioned carbamates, which we'll talk about later, using different EPA methods. Now, in Europe, this is an older slide published in a brochure by Perkin-Elmer, published in Europe. Europeans are very concerned about environmental impact in drinking water because a lot of the country tend to get their water in the Rhine River, and the upstream is Germany and a lot of chemical manufacture for the various compounds. So before the advent of the triple quad mass spec, a lot of these are done by UV detection, and you can do it pretty well in drinking water using something called the SPE disk, stand for solid phase extraction. Instead of using a cartridge, you use a filter disc, at that time marketed by 3M, impregnated with C18 phases. So you can actually filter a whole gallon, a whole liter of drinking water or river water through that, and all the hydrophobic pesticide is retained, and you can wash it off with a little bit of acetonitrile or methanol and inject it into an HPLC with photodiode detection. Here is a great separation in about an hour of these 23 pesticides, which is on the list to be regulated in European countries, in the EU countries. So I want to talk a bit about HPLC analysis pesticides for multi-residue method for mostly agro chemicals, foodstuff, soil sample. Now, obviously, the sample prep is a huge, is quite elaborate for these very complex samples, such as vegetable extracts, soil sample, very complex. So there's quite a bit of emphasis on something that is simple, reproducible, and also cheap and quick, right? So there's a class of extraction method called Kershaw, very popular acronyms, Kershaw, and we talk a little bit about what it means. So sample preparation and extraction, typically first you homogenize this vegetable, do some type of solvent extraction, you clean up. You can clean up by various technique, but the most prominent is SPE, particularly in the cartridge form, disposable cartridge form. It can be C18, could be ion exchange, depending on the sample type. In some cases, you might have to dereutize it. So the modern trend on sample prep is something called Kershaw, stands for quick, easy, cheap, effective, rugged, and safe, right? So Kershaw. So based on a standard extraction procedure, particularly using cartridges for multi-residue, typically done by LC with a triple quad procedure, which is the gold standard for highly specific multi-residue testing at the very trace level. So here's once again the list of pesticides being done on these food stuff and agrochemicals stuff, insecticides, fungicides, herbicides, growth regulators. I'd like to, I personally done quite a bit on carbamate system when I was with Perkin-Elmer. Actually, personally developed a carbamate analysis system, so something that I worked on for several years, including customer support. So one of the systems that was developed uses a EPA method and with post-column dereutization. The one that we particularly spend quite a bit of time on using something called OPA, OPER, stand for orthothialdehyde, and also you need to hydrolyze the carbamates into an amine and derivatize it with OPA with very sensitive fluorescent detection, right? So this is the analytical workflow stream or configuration for the system. So using a binary pump injection, column oven, and 2 reagent pumps with heated reaction coils to give you a post-column derivatization workstations. So this particular diagram came from publication in 1992. Here are carbamate in a spinach extract. Shown here, quite a bit of this carbamate, which is pretty high level. I'm sure that this is a little bit beyond the regulatory level. The regular level probably is handled by USDA for these vegetable and foodstuff products. So this is a 0.18 ppm, which is pretty high. Yeah. This is once again a sample of Long Island well water. So some of the hoopla, some of the big news on carbamate really started in Long Island, okay, because of the unique geology. Long Island actually is a terminal moraine from the ice age from the glacier that glaciated the entire Northeast America, and all the debris got deposited as Long Island, right? So it's basically, in a simple words, like a big sandbar. And also the glacier scooped out the Long Island Sound. Now, several decades ago, carbamate was discovered in the drinking water. It was a big public outcry that it was found. And it turned out that drinking water is taken from the aquifer. And because it's a sandbar, the contamination came a lot from the potato farming in Long Island, right? So once carbamate, which is a biodegradable pesticide used quite a bit in agriculture, I believe it's also used in some of the golf courses in there, and the runoff go right directly to the aquifer. So it need to be cleaned up. So the regulatory level, even today, is pretty low. It's about 3 ppb, stand for parts per billion. And the good thing is that you can do some, basically inject 2 mil or 1 mil of the drinking water, well water directly, and you can get pretty low level, right? So here is actually a sample showing pretty high level of carbamate, 2 of the carbamate. So the total regulatory level is 3 ppb. So this is definitely beyond the regulation, right? So this is not good. Here's the performance characteristic published on basically documentate how the performance level. Things are actually pretty very precise retention, very precise, pretty good peak area, even down to very low level, and the detection limit at the ppb level, but using direct injection. Today, you can probably do carbamate, even though the regulatory method using post-column derivatization, right? So LC mass spec probably offer, pretty unique and perhaps in some way even simpler quantification of some of these carbamates. Shown here is an application note from Shanghai in China by Agilent Technology, using a polar shell column, which is a SPP, a superficially porous bonded phases, would give you a high efficiency, and without post-column derivatization, just using mass spec, you can get it at pretty low levels. Now, glyphosate is another of these chemicals which become a big hoopla. Glyphosate, the trademark is Roundup by Monsanto, right? Actually, the lawsuit becomes so time-consuming, and that it actually bankrupt Monsanto, and Monsanto was then get acquired by Bayer, and Roundup is still around, except that because the trade name is so well accepted, it's still around, except that the actual chemical shown in if you buy some Roundup from Home Depot, it's not going to be the actual glyphosate. It's going to be something that labeled as Roundup as a trademark. So here's the glyphosate, and glyphosate metabolized to AMPA. And once again, the analytical scheme is very similar, using post-column deuterization, using very similar to that of carbamates. I want to spend a few minutes talking about PAHs, stand for polynuclear aromatic hydrocarbon, which turned out to be a potent class of carcinogens. Actually, is I know there's a lot of scary story about carcinogen, but this one is definitely kind of well established or well proven, well linked to human cancer, particularly in smokers. Show you a little about the background on PAHs. Also, it turned out to be my graduate degree thesis. I work on HPLC on PAHs and published a paper early on in analytical chemistry in 1975. So I started my career on the developing methods for PAHs. So something pretty dear to my heart, right? Now, it turned out that PAHs are very ubiquitous. They happen everywhere because it's formed by pyrosynthesis during the combustion. You can burn any organic materials, and under a less with a lack of oxygen, right? And if you burn it under certain condition, all the free radical under these high temperature we recombine to form these highly condensed aromatic compound, right? Because these are very stable compounds, so it's a combustional end product. So as a subsequence, PAHs are found almost everywhere as a trace pollutant in soil, in air pollution, air particulate matters from burning coal, oil. Actually, can wind up in drinking water because it's found in coal tar. Particularly important is present in tobacco tar, which is directly linked to non-small cell lung cancer found in tobacco smokers, cigarette smokers. Also in coal tar. Actually, engine oil is a carcinogen. So definitely, when you change your oil, you want to protect yourself from oil, but obviously the engine oil cannot get really into your body. It's really not bioavailable. While if you're a smoker, the tar deposited on your lung, and eventually it might get metabolized and become a mutant and become a carcinogen. So we talk a little bit about in the next slide on the pathway of carcinogenicity from PAHs. Now, also, it's found in foodstuffs such as barbecue meat, right? Particularly when you barbecue. Once you close that barbecue, close the lid, you actually can form some trace level of PAHs because then you don't have a lot of oxygen to oxidize the burn protein, and they form a trace level of barbecue. But actually, PAHs are less implicated in colon cancer or gastric cancer for various reasons, because your alimentary canal can handle some of these extraneous material a little better. Also, PAH are kind of very hydrophobic, right? So it's is kind of not quite easily absorbed, right? But in the lung, it's a different matter. PAH are carcinogenic. Actually, it is a procarcinogen. We talk about that later. It needs metabolic activation. And one of the most highly potent one is something called benzoapyrene. We will talk about that. It's often used as a model compound for study of PAHs. And there's literally thousands of study on benzoapyrene and PAHs. The analytical technique is definitely HPLC, and also it's also GCable, so you can do GC, GCMS, HPLC, and also they fluoresce. So so there can be very easily detected if you use fluorescence. So the advantage of HPLC are ability to resolve some isomeric PAHs, because some of them have geometric isomer, and if you use a certain type of column, labeled pH column, particularly using a polyfunctional silane chemistry with more shape selectivity, you can separate some of these important isomers. And very selective quantitation, particularly with fluorescence or programmed fluorescence and mass spec detection. EPA method for pHs are for drinking water 550.1 and also wastewater 610 and also solid waste 8310. So there are a lot of interest on looking on PAHs. I want to go back several 2 centuries. Actually, is of particularly humane story on the story of chimney sweeps and the high incidence of scrotal cancer. So that actually happened in 1775, published by a surgeon called a British surgeon called Percival Pott. He's a MD with a lot of credentials, and he is the first person to link chimney soot as a chemical carcinogen. So this is the first kind of proven case of chemical carcinogenesis. Happened almost more than 2 centuries ago. Later on, I want to talk about 2 other scientists, Ernst Winder and Dietrich Hoffmann, and there's also a personal story there. So 1775, Percival Pott, a British surgeon, found a high association of soot linked to high incidence of scrotal cancer in chimney sweeps. Now, scrotal cancer are very rare. So once again, when you find that in a certain occupation, so at those time in England, they use little boys to do sweep chimney because they're small and agile, and because they also have very poor hygienic conditions. So some of the suits get around the scrotum, which have very thin skins. Eventually, it passes into the blood and causes scrotal cancer. So this is a very unique case of epidemiological study, which is actually quite unavoidable because it's just rare. So first case of proven chemical environmental carcinogen that cause human malignancy, right? Now, obviously, there's a huge link of tobacco smoking, cigarette smoking, and lung cancer. And in the 1920s, people tried to study, and they found that tobacco tar contain a trace level of PAHs, which become the principal carcinogen fraction in tar. Most of the tars are actually pretty non-carcinogenic, and the fraction that caused the most problem is the pH containing fraction. So 2 gentlemen are particularly prominent in these tobacco carcinogenesis. One is a MD, Dr. Ernst Winder, epidemiologist. When he and Dr. Dietrich Hoffmann worked at Sloan Kettering Institute, they did study on cigarette smoke, And Winder actually, as a medical student, is the first one to demonstrate that smoke condensate or smoke tar can cause animal tumors, right? So he did an experiment with rabbit's ear, painting the tar on rabbit's ear, and he elicited a tumor response on that. And later on, the collaboration with Dr. Dietrich Hoffmann, who's a biochemist, lay a strong foundation. Between the two, they probably published the hundreds and hundreds of papers on carcinogenesis, different type of cancer, with strong focus on tobacco carcinogen. The reason this story is particularly personal because I summer intern under Dr. Hoffman, also Dr. Stephen Hecht, who later went to University of Minnesota as a professor. So I actually worked in the laboratory called American Health Foundation, founded by Dr. Winder, and for 3 years. And actually, my first wave of publication when I was a summer intern and postdoc, I published a total of 9 journal articles on PAHs, later on azadirine, which are nitrogen analog of PAHs, and also on nitrosamine. It turned out that one of the nitrosamine is specific to tobacco, which is nitroso-nornicotine, the nitrosation of nicotine to form a carcinogen, nitrosamine. Now, it turned out that benzoylpyrene or some of the PAHs are not carcinogenic by themselves. They are called a procarcinogen, meaning that they need to be they're not carcinogenic by itself, but need to be activated by an enzyme through an oxidative enzyme such as P450. So quite a bit of active work in the 70s and 80s. So the pathway of carcinogenicity and mutagenicity was well established and well understood. So the question is, how does a harmless-looking chemical such as a aromatic compound with not a lot of structure turn into a potent mutagen or carcinogen? And the pathway actually through metabolic activation through oxidative enzyme into a diol epoxy. Turn out that most of the aromatic compounds are pretty not carcinogenic. And obviously, people understand that you have a benzylic position when you have position here and here next to a benzene molecule, and particularly when the delocalization, you can really highly activate these two positions. So it turned out that human enzyme can metabolize it into something called diol epoxide, and these actually has a powerful mutagen. It can intercalate in human DNA and eventually elicit a tumoric response on that. So this is well researched and well established. So here is a journal article from Nature on the metabolism of benzoylpyrene. So if you look at the EPA method, some of the methods are pretty long, and I remember one of them is almost like 120 pages. It looks like a master thesis if you execute one of those EPA method. So in the 1990, I was very intent to try to make things better, make it more routine compatible. So I worked on it in one summer and developed a quick turnaround HPLC method using something called programmed fluorescence, right? If you have something very specific, at that time, mass spec is not very common, right? So these actually, the programmed fluorescence method are very specific, and it actually allow you to do to inject even some very complex soil sample very easily with some very simple cleanup. So this is a particularly matter extract. This one came from the Long Island Expressway. soot from along an expressway from automobile exhaust. That's collected by a high-volume sampler, air sampler. And some of the soot can be extracted, and the extract can be injected almost directly into an HPLC using programmed fluorescence. One can You can see some of these level of benzoyl A pyrene. Number 12 is a benzoyl K for furanthine. Now there's a list of 16 PAHs on the EPA list, right? So everybody used this NIST sample from NIST as a reference standard. This is another demonstration of a quick turnaround methods for sediment, which is very complex. So one can actually do a quick turnaround in 1 hour, right? From the sample, some very simple extraction technology, and inject directly. You can see that in comparison with my NIST 1647 method, right? Even for a sediment extract using very simple cleanup, some of these are very prominent, right? You always see the finger printing one, right? So the ratio seem to be quite reproducible on all type of PAHs found in environmental samples. You can see very similar profile between this sample and the air particulate sample. I'd like to do at least some comments on nitrosamine with a side twist on the nitrosamine, not just in the environment, but in drug product, which become a very hot topics because some nitrosamine are found in some pretty common product such as Santec, and also in this particular application here, valsartan is the high pressure medicine. I think it's Diovan being trademarked. So they can find a pretty good level or trace level of dimethylamine nitrosamine, dimethylamine analog of nitrosamine from these drug products. So that elicited a whole wave of testing and a lot of emergency testing in a lot of pharmaceutical companies, and also quite a number of recalls. This figure is on PFAS, which is a class of forever chemical of recent health concern. Right? So this is one compound which is of particularly potent carcinogenicity, which is perfluoro alkyl substance, and this one is a fatty acid at the end. Potent class of carcinogen analyzed by LC mass spec. Now the reason is of high concern is that these were found in almost everybody because they are bioaccumulated, and particular concern is some link to renal cancer and kidney cancer because it just get accumulated in those particular organ. So perfluoroalkyl substances is this class of compound, right? So they have different level of carcinogenicity depending on some of the polar end groups. The regulatory level in drinking water is particularly low, 10 ppt, stand for parts per trillion level using EPA method 533 with triple quad detection. Else is carbonyl compounds or aldehyde and ketone using pre-column dehydrogenation with 2,4-dinitrophenylhydrazine DNPH using EPA method 8315A. The chromatogram was courtesy of Advanced Material Technology. This slides demonstrate the use of two-dimensional LC for comprehensive screening of wastewater. There's a very active environmental chemistry program in KU Leuven in Belgium, where this publication shown here was documented. The whole idea behind it is that because some of the environment sample are very complex, right? If you have a screening program for all type of wastewater pollutants, one-dimensional might not be sufficient. If you have couple two-dimensional together, such as reverse phase using one orthogonal dimension and then another dimension, one can actually get much better quantification. Some of the research group actually demonstrate the use of different orthogonal techniques, such as something called HELIC, in combined with a mass spec compatible reverse phase, and then end up with mass spec detection. This is the reference list of this topic, and this is the end of video episode number 24 on environmental testing by HPLC. I'd like to thank our channel collaborator, LCGC Magazine, and I'd like to encourage all attendees to subscribe for future videos. And see you next time. Bye.